Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Attempted Optimism, where we're just trying our best and failing miserably. I'm Justin.
And I'm Ben, and we're struggling.
We'll
And
do it live. We'll do it live.
this is tough. I'm going to be
Keep
honest
it
with
in.
you. I'm going to be honest with you. The way that we start these podcasts, let's give them a little background information. The way we start these podcasts is we start a timer on our phones, and then we go to the computer and we start the recording. The problem is Justin doesn't ever wait for the visual cue, and then we get into this back and forth of me pointing at the screen and him laughing. And
I think we've ever discussed a visual cue.
what did I say to you right before we start? I said I'll count to 3 with my fingers and then point.
And then you
said
counted to
no,
3.
and you said no. I'll just count 5 seconds. But then it was like 40 seconds.
You probably shouldn't just tell me.
We're moving
Just don't
on.
tell me when you. Just don't tell me when you start recording.
We're moving on. This week we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to talk about a few things we've learned during this COVID-19 pandemic, this crisis that we're in. We just decided we'd talk a little bit about some things that we've learned, some things that maybe just in general have stuck out to us. And so I'll start us, I guess, since this was my idea. I threw you under the bus and said, this is what we're going to do.
You said that, didn't you say this like coming off the heels of last week's podcast?
Yeah, I think I texted
like
you on
immediately
Monday.
after we stopped.
Yeah, I feel like I texted you on Monday because I was like, we'll probably need some time to think about this, because this is not like a normal play a game kind of a thing. This is like actually having to use our brains and what we've learned.
Yeah.
So these are in no particular order, like highest to lowest or most important or anything, just things we've learned. The first thing I've learned, and this is kind of a funny one, I guess, especially if you have kids, is that teachers and child care workers should definitely get paid more. Definitely, and that's for somebody who sends their kid to child care and will eventually have to send their kid to school. But we just do not pay these workers enough. And I've got a 2.5-year-old, almost 2.5-year-old, and I'm gonna be honest with you, like. Let's just be upfront. My wife will be mad that I probably said this on a podcast, but I was never much of a kid person anyways. Like, I don't necessarily like kids that much, but it takes on a whole different meaning when you are literally at home all day with your kid, every day.
Yeah.
And, my wife and I, we switch off. So I normally go in the afternoons. She goes into work in the morning. So we switch watching him. But I think it's more than anything is you don't have a free minute. So, like, my schedule before all this happened was, like, on Fridays, I've always taken off at noon. Always, every day, or every Friday, for years now. I've always taken off at noon. And we would leave Oliver at daycare until about 3:30 or 4 o'clock. So I'd always have, like, this 2.5-3 hour window where I could chill and do nothing or do whatever I wanted. And now, I'm sorry, technical difficulties. My cat's deciding to try to eat cords right now. But, no, and there's just this freedom in that. And there are none of those anymore. You don't get those windows anymore. And so I just think now is the time, if ever, that we should start paying these people way more money. Because I love my son. He's great. But I relish the day when daycare is back and we could just drop him off safely at the daycare and say, you have a great day and I will have a great day and we will see you at 4 o'clock. So that's the first thing that I've learned. I probably could be a stay-at-home dad, but that would mean that my wife would have to be a millionaire, and that would soften the blow of having to be at home all the time. So
Soften the blow.
yeah. Soften the blow, because that's really what it would be. So that's the first thing that I've learned during the COVID-19 pandemic.
When did you at any point during this, did you see that coming? Like when all the news started breaking about this whole thing back in like late February, early March? Did you see any of how bad it was gonna get?
I don't think anybody understood how bad it was gonna get. Like, I think we had like a concept or an idea or a guess. I always kind of believed it would go on way longer than we thought it would, because people especially early days, like 2-3 weeks we'll be done with this. And I always had like this feeling like we could go through the end of summer or something crazy. But I think it's more like, and we chose this, for us, Chelsea and I, it was more of a fear thing. We didn't want to drop him off at daycare with the opportunity or chance that he could get sick. Not to say that daycare
Right.
can't take care of those things; they're not clean or anything. It's just a
So you guys pulled out
so we
before
yeah before
ISDs or
we
anything like
ever
that.
had to, like, we did it like week one,
Yeah.
and so it's been a very long adventure for us compared to maybe some who, because technically we could still have him in daycare because it's essential
Yeah.
workers, we're considered essential workers, but it's just a comfort thing for us, and so we want to make sure he stayed healthy. But I mean, every day that I talk to my mom or dad, I'm like, can't wait for vacation because I guarantee you,
Yeah.
I'm bringing him right to you, and
Just poke holes in the box.
have a great time for 2 weeks, and then we'll see
Yep.
after that. You know, it's like one of those things. But yeah, so that's number one for me.
Yeah.
That let's pay people
Well-
more money because they deserve it. That's a special kind of worker, teachers and childcare workers. So, what about you? You want to go with your first one that you've learned? Something you've learned?
Yeah. I mean, my first one is how long the appropriate hand washing is.
Oh, okay. So
20 seconds.
educate
Sing happy
me.
birthday to yourself.
20 seconds.
Yeah, for the first, like, you sing happy birthday to yourself, and once the song's over, at a normal pace, then you should be done hand washing.
I saw a video about this, okay? And it was like, they're trying to detail how you're supposed to hand wash. And she put like
Yeah.
black paint on her hands, this lady, and was like hand washing and
Oh,
doing,
it was
and I'm
bad.
like,
It was
I
so
don't
bad.
I don't do that. Like, there's no chance that I'm like doing a scrubbing motion,
Yeah,
and scrubbing
neglecting
my,
the thumbs.
my fingernails and stuff. Like, I put soap on my hands and I wash them. But like, it was kind of,
I just, ugh.
and like, we've both been through disaster training, so like, I know that there are like specific protocols for washing your hands and stuff, especially when you're serving food and things. But I'm like, it's just not something I do.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that you do. Have you started doing that now? Like, has that become a thing for you?
What, singing? No, I sang happy birthday for the first week, out of mostly because I try to be a very lighthearted person. I don't always succeed, but I do try. And so in the office, I would sing shout happy birthday.
Yeah.
While
Like a metal
washing my
band?
hands.
Kind of like
Oh,
a
it
metal
was-
band style? Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard you sing, so I'm trying to picture you singing happy birthday.
You've heard me sing.
Have I? Do you
Somebody
sing?
come-
No.
or
okay.
like
No.
or something from TikTok.
I was trying to think.
Errol Baskin.
Yeah, I guess I've heard you sing that. That's more of a sing-song kind of a rhyme thing, though. But yeah, okay, I guess I have heard you sing.
Happy birthday is not like a legit one though. No, but on a serious note, one of the things that I put down as me having learned through all this is less of me sort of learning it and more of me kind of having it affirmed for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of what I learned through COVID things are kind of more affirmation things I didn't know about myself. But one of the big ones was my confidence in myself.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody that's known me for any stretch of time, I'm not a very confident person, and I'm an introvert that has tendencies that lean towards extroversion.
Yeah. Introvert with an extrovert wing. You can fly away for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. So I become an extrovert when things like there's pressure, like job pressure or things like ministry pressure, and when I kind of overexert myself, I need to back off for a little bit. I need to be home for a little bit. I need to, kind of figure myself out and kind of get up into my little cocoon, my blanket cocoon or whatever, and get myself back to normal. And so when I'm around a lot of, like, I don't like parties. I don't like, when I lived in Nashville, everybody wanted to go to 2nd Street because that's the place you go in Nashville.
Okay.
I don't like going to, big sporting events or concerts.
You're not a
like
social gathering person.
I'm not a social gathering person. I'd much rather be at home doing this kind of thing. But even this had its own sort of nerve attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've kind of become affirmed of is that I do have confidence in myself, and I should have confidence in myself. I did not have confidence in my ministry for a long time, confidence in my leadership, and I'm in a leadership position. I didn't have confidence in online worship. I never wanted to do it. In 7 years,
Yeah.
I've had many, many people, especially in Memphis. We had a pretty sizable congregation,
Yeah.
and we had people that wanted to, help us start recording some stuff. And we've always had like Facebook pages for our churches and our congregations and stuff. But I never wanted to post anything. I never wanted to bother with any of that stuff because I wasn't confident in my voice of, what I had to say and kind of,
Okay.
my ministry and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And then with this YouTube channel and our podcast,
Yeah.
none of that is anything that, it's stuff that I wanted to do, stuff that I wanted to try, but was always too afraid of it. And so, kind of with COVID, it kind of threw everybody into the deep
Yeah.
end. And I know that when everything started, when we first received that email that we needed to stop having church in our
physical gatherings.
physical gatherings from leadership, then what we were going to do is we were just going to record a quick video devotional thing and then leave it at that. And that's something that my wife and I talked about. And that first Sunday, my wife got up by herself, didn't even wake me up. I slept in. She woke up and got on Facebook Live and did a Facebook Live thing where she did another devotional thought because we had already recorded something and sent it out on like Friday, I think.
Yeah.
And she did one, and then I got up later and was like super irritated. I was like, "Why didn't you wake me up? Like you should have woke me up. I should have had a part in this or something like that." And I was really proud of her that she did it.
Yeah.
She took the first step for sure for our congregation. And then she just said, "Well, what if we just did this, or what if we just did that?" And it was baby steps for us. For us, it was just getting on Facebook Live with this, crappy webcam and all of that kind of stuff. And just, I think I had this microphone by then. I'm not sure.
Yeah. You've had that microphone for quite a while.
Yeah, and so I had what I had, and I just started doing Facebook Live, and then I started figuring some things out, and we started, talking about doing the podcast. We started doing the podcast. We started talking about doing a YouTube channel. We opened the YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel.
I figured out how to use like Streamlabs and stuff, and now, I'm really proud of the stuff we're doing now because I went on Igniter Media, not a sponsor.
Could be a sponsor.
And
shout out Igniter.
I wish.
I don't know what that is.
There's a lot of really good stuff on Igniter Media. I'll show you sometime after this. But, I went on there last night. And we got a ton of like motion, like looping video backgrounds and countdowns and all kinds of stuff. And I just went nuts. And we started throwing all this kind of stuff in to where now our service is still a closed service because it's on our Facebook,
in the Facebook group.
It's in our Facebook group. It's for our congregation, but there's loads of people that don't even live in our service area that are invited to it.
That's cool.
And then anybody that's in it can invite other people.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to put it on our church Facebook page because there had been some heat back in Christmas where there were a lot of people that were kind of upset with us for whatever reason or whatever thing was going on. And so we didn't want to put anything up there because we didn't want any of our people to see kind of discouraging comments or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then be discouraged or anything. So we decided to do it at closed group, and we've kept it a closed group. But I've got like board members and
that's really cool.
Congregation people, loads of people that are on it. My parents are on it, so my parents are having church with us every week. And we thought about moving it back to the core and just kind of doing like when we get a camera. And when I finally get my camera to do like a legit thing like you see some of the other churches doing, kind of like the Joel Osteen thing where it's just him in the place by himself up on the stage and stuff. And I'm kind of just feeling this right now. Being in my home, this is the backdrop. It's my house, my living room. There's my dog we keep the TV on for the dog.
Is that who that's for?
Yeah, that's
we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later. But yeah. So confidence in myself, confidence in my ministry, confidence in online things. It's all kind of been improved by or out of COVID-19, and that kind of leads into my other one. But I'll leave that for later. But yeah, confidence in myself, confidence in my ministry, confidence in God's ability to use me for those kinds of things.
Oh,
is
that's
something
good.
that I've learned.
Yeah. Well, my next one kind of plays into that as well. And I think something, I don't know necessarily that I learned, I don't know if it's the right word, but something I've noticed is that this pandemic is something, it sparked something really important in the church, which kind of plays into what you're talking about a little bit. And I think like, we've had this conversation off stream off podcast, and I've had it with a lot of people, and I think there's just like there's real necessity for this movement, and that seems weird because it's not really how we want things to work, but
Yeah.
I think for sure, like it sparked something in the church that was really necessary, because I think if we're honest, unless you're a mega church for the most part, and I've seen some smaller churches, very few though, that unless you're a mega church, like you just don't do online services. You don't stream your services, even if you're even though every Sunday, if you set up a phone on your Facebook, and just put it in your, out in the pulpit, like everybody literally could watch your service. And that's what, my wife and I have done. We have not done anything crazy or wild. We've literally done, I set my phone up in front of us and hit go or live or whatever it is, start.
With your cute little cardigans.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the cardigans. But no, I think like this was so necessary, and so few people did it. And the reality is that most churches are very insulated, like very insulated. There are, if you were to go to especially like small towns, there's like a church every other block, and yet very few churches reach the community. And I think if church leaders are honest, they would admit the same. There are very few churches that actually reach the community on a regular basis. And I do think like, man, this movement has given opportunity to every pastor to be reaching people they normally wouldn't reach. Like we have board members who listen into the services. I have a guy that we met on a missions trip in Cuba that regularly will tune in and watch with us on a Sunday morning. I don't even know that he speaks that well of English, because when we were there, he definitely didn't. And so, but he's there. Like he'll come in, he'll type a comment. He's definitely watching some of it, and so I just think like how necessary this was and how missing it was. And we've talked about it, but I think there is that fear like people will just go back to doing what they've always done. And I think that's a real shame, and people will do that. That's not a, like...
Oh, 100%.
It's 100%.
They already are.
It will happen.
They already are.
Like, people will stop live streaming their services. And I think that's missing out, because you really don't know, like, who you could reach and who could end up showing up at your actual physical church building for a service sometime, because they saw you on Facebook or Twitch or wherever people are streaming. I think primarily Facebook, because that's the easiest way to outreach to people. But I do think this was, in some ways, if you want to take the silver lining out of a really bad situation, like for churches, this has given opportunity to really break out into the world, as we should have already been. And kind of a tag along to that, outside of churches, I think it's been really cool to see like a lot of groups kind of reach out. Like I've seen, especially like musicians, DJs, comedians that are just doing stuff for free, because you can't have a concert, you can't go to a venue, so they're just getting on Facebook. Like one of the best ones I watched was Chris Martin, Coldplay, just like sat down in his whatever studio room and just played songs by request off the top of his brain. And then like Christian bands, Ren Collective, they do a live thing every Friday. They'll get on there, sing songs. They read a book one Friday that they have, and it's just like, man, that's so cool. And we've always had this available, but people didn't use it. And so that's the other thing that stuck out to me, or something that really has been really cool during this time. Something that I hope will continue. I know it won't, because as soon as people can get money, revenue back off of people being able to go to venues, then that will happen. But
they get that tithe back.
Yeah.
That
too, if you from the church perspective. But as soon as things get back to normal, people will stop doing this, and it's a missed opportunity. It's part of the reason why we started this YouTube channel, because we knew that this would be a way to continue what we've been doing, not to just let it trail off and be done, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's number 2 for me. The second thing.
Yeah, and my number 2 is exactly that. As a matter of fact, it's kind of this. There's this idea that I have this kind of revelation. Early in my ministry, I had a series of really bad years, like a lot of really bad years, and I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. I felt like I was being singled out or punished for something, or things like that, and all that to say is that eventually I was doing a Bible study in Memphis, and which is my first congregation, and I was doing a Bible study, and we got through Deuteronomy. We were in Joshua. And Joshua taught me, and really the middle point between Deuteronomy, Exodus and Deuteronomy together, but leading into Joshua, the things that probably one of the biggest revelations that I probably have ever had spiritually is this idea that it's not that it wasn't punishment per se. And what I mean by that is, to clarify, when the 12 spies, one from each tribe of Israel, go into Canaan, when they're scouting out the promised land that God is sending them to, they come back and they're distraught and they're discouraged, and they see giants and they say, there's no shot. We don't have a prayer or a dream here. There's nothing here for us. We can't beat these people. We should have stayed in Egypt. That was 10 out of the 12. They had the 2 faithful. But what and then what happens after that story is that God, righteously so, gets super fed up with Israel, he punishes them to spend time, a generation, in the wilderness, the Sinai desert as we know it. And I always had that question. Anytime I go through a Bible study and some old school material, or Old Testament, I call it old school material.
Old school material? That's what you call the Old Testament? Old school material?
Basically, why not? Don't at me.
That's awesome. Old school material. I'm just going to be going through the old school material this morning.
That's right. That's right.
This is Joshua.
Flip to the old stuff. So anytime I go through any of that material, the question that comes up the most common is, why is God so mean? Like, why is he hard? Why is he punishing people? What does all this mean? And why is this going on? And to me, it speaks out, this kind of lesson that I had, that I figured out in my own time of turmoil, and my own kind of spiritual walk, is that God does not punish. He does punish, and he has punished, and he will punish at the end of days, but he does not punish without a purpose.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that COVID's a punishment. So I'm going to bridge the gap if you'll just stay with me.
I'm here. I'm still here.
As Daniel Tosh says, I'm going to feed you, baby birds. Just hang out.
I haven't gotten up and walked away yet. So
that's right.
I'll hold on for now.
So the idea that I learned from the wilderness is that it wasn't about punishment. It was about discipline.
Okay.
Right? So it was Israel was not ready to lean on God. And so they needed to go back into the desert, and they needed to wander there to where God was raining down manna, right? Because he sustained them in the desert when they couldn't find anything else.
Raining down pizza.
And so he was sustaining them throughout that, so that they could learn to trust in him and to lean on him.
Yeah.
And so, so that when that generation had come and gone, and the next generation was ready to go, Joshua happened, and they were able to go into the promised land.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of political stuff in there as well, and there's a lot of, stuff, with Moses and all the things that happened at the end there. Yeah. More importantly, what I'm trying to say is, and again, it's not about COVID being a punishment from God. I don't think that's the case at all.
No.
What I think that God uses these difficult times.
Yeah.
And it's throughout the old school, throughout the new school, where he uses these difficult times, these times of adversity, to grow and improve the church. If you look at what happened with Jesus, when he dies on the cross, right?
Mm-hmm.
Up to that point, his disciples saw their master as somebody who was like Superman. All these great things are happening. They don't come up against a problem without being able to solve it with very little difficulty. They have confidence in him and in their leadership. They have, they have. They're learning things. Things are progressing. They're being improved on. They're being edified, and all of these things. And then what happens is Jesus dies. He goes to the cross and he dies. And to take away all of the other things that go with that, if you just looked at the perspective of the disciples, everything that they had put their trust and their hope and their faith and their confidence in has now been pulled out from under them. And it wasn't for a purpose. I mean, it was a purpose that led him to the cross, but it wasn't the purpose of them having their feet swept out from under them.
No, that's not why Jesus died on the cross.
In the midst of that, they were able to, that their sins had been, a provision, a sacrifice had been made for their sins, and the sins of the world. And, even in the midst of them being in that upper room, like on Easter Sunday, and they're they're not sure what to do now. What do we do? Rumors. Some have seen Jesus having risen again on the third day and all that kind of stuff. And then he just shows up in the room. I preached on this a couple weeks ago. He just shows up in the room, and they're still not believing what's going on.
A little startling, let's be honest.
A little, yeah. It's like, I mean, come on, like.
A little startling.
And then he says, "Do not be afraid." Okay, Jesus.
It's the best line in the entire Bible.
I love it.
It's like everywhere.
I love it.
It's always like the first thing that they say. Do not be afraid.
Exactly.
No,
Do not be afraid. Are you kidding me?
Who
are you?
I already am
You're
afraid.
supposed to be a ghost or something. And so what we can learn from COVID, I think probably the most important lesson that I've learned from all of this is not that this is some sort of punishment that's being heaped on our heads, but more importantly for us to learn this is that in the midst of adversity is when the church can grow and improve and encourage one another. It's by the testing of our faith that produces perseverance. It is running this race, and it's continuing on no matter what the hurdles are, that matures our spirituality. It's what completes us, and being perfect is being completed, right? And this is a step in that direction. Is when our faith is tested in adversity, this is what happens. If you look at the church history across thousands of years,
I didn't know what you were going to say there.
It's in places of great adversity that you see growth in the church.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something, going back to the point that you made, kind of a problem with the United States as a whole and kind of our culture and society is that Jesus kind of already won here. You see what I'm saying? Like you have the Bible
absolutely.
Belt.
Yeah.
You have it's a very churched nation.
We're still we still call ourselves a Christian nation. Right.
And so
for better or for worse.
For better or for worse, and in most cases you see on TV, just worse.
Yeah.
But my point of bringing that up is that it's kind of like the Romans. They would rest on their laurels, the little deals that they would Little Caesar's Pizza has on his ears.
That's not
pizza. So they would rest on their laurels, meaning that they rested on all of their good deeds and things. And I feel like, if I can be frank, I feel like the Christian church, at least in the United States, probably North America as a whole, and a lot of Western society, is church to the point where the victory has already been won, and not talking about Christ's victory for us, talking about we've already become missionaries to all of this. All of this is a church area. This is a church nation.
Yeah.
And so we rest on our laurels, and we don't work hard, and we don't strive and struggle.
We don't branch out.
The gospel.
We don't change anything.
Why would you need
to?
Yeah. There's 18 churches all on the same block.
Yeah,
if you've never been to Memphis, Tennessee, it's like mega church, and our church was like half of a school building size.
Yeah.
And like 2 blocks down the road, there was a mega church. Across the street, there's another church that had fallen a long time ago.
I do think,
and so it's like that idea where we need this adversity now
to wake us
and
up.
we need to be woken up, and we need to use the momentum that we have in the midst of all of this stuff to continue forward. And online ministry has to be the new prairie, the new
Yeah.
pioneer, the new frontier, I guess, that we go for, is
Yeah.
because there are people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are out there being unreached because what they've seen is poor examples of Christianity, and it's not being lived out by example. It's being lived out by words that people throw in hatred. And
Yeah.
this is a way that we can speak out against that. This is a way that we can show people what it is like to live a Christ-like life and not be a complete tool.
Yeah, I mean, I do think like I was just talking to my wife about it the other day. Like, there's this reality that, like, especially right now, the new celebrity is the online celebrity.
Yeah.
We both watch streamers pretty regularly. We are on Twitch a lot, but I was watching a YouTube gamer the other day. I'm not gonna throw his name out, but I was watching a YouTube gamer, and he was playing with two DJs, two very famous DJs. One who produces music for Ariana Grande and Justin Bieber and everybody across the sun, and they got to talking about traveling after COVID and where they wanted to go and what they want to do. And the YouTube streamer said, man, I'd love to go to Australia. And the DJ he's playing with goes, oh, well, when I go on my next tour, just I'll just bring you with me and you can stream the whole thing.
Yeah.
And and he says to somebody in the background, make sure somebody write that down for me so that I remember to call the streamer.
Please.
And and it's just that thing of like, there's this huge platform that is being underutilized by the church. Everybody else is utilizing it. I mean, people are making millions of dollars literally playing video games or talking. I mean, they're the biggest category on Twitch for fun facts is just chatting. It is the largest. It's people sitting in front of their computers like we're doing right now and talking. And yet somehow the church has not utilized that. Yeah. I mean, that's literally like half of our job is sitting and talking to people, sharing a message. And so I do think, like, man, what a platform if somebody can just break through that platform. And I could be, oversimplifying it, because I'm sure there are Christian people out there who have large platforms who are sharing. But I think as a whole, in general, what we are talking about is an underutilized platform of the internet to share the gospel. So,
because what are we scared of is the question I would ask there. What are we so frightened of? Is it because a while ago I heard the argument coming from an unnamed source that we shouldn't be having these types of things on these kinds of platforms because you never know if it's live. You never know what people are going to say. I'm sorry. I have a church where probably 80% of the people in my congregation on a given Sunday are homeless, and probably 60 to 70% of them are using drugs.
Yeah.
like interruptions happen no matter what you want to do
happen.
or say.
We've both been in a service where we've had a incident occur. That's a nice way of putting it. I'm trying to be kind here, but we've had an incident occur in the service. So I would agree with you. There's nothing to be afraid of because we don't know what people could say. I mean, some of my fondest memories of being a pastor are the moments where somebody has stood up in the middle of my sermon and given an input, like we were kind of having a back and forth. And I mean, it just happens, especially for Salvation Army pastors. I mean, that's a pretty regular thing for us. And so I would agree with you. There's really nothing to be afraid of. But I do think that there is some fear to it. And again, it's something we're going to have to overcome. I think, and I could be wrong, this is off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure church attendance, especially for young people, is probably at its lowest ever. But where we can find all the young people is online all the time.
Oh, shoot, on YouTube?
And I just saw on TikTok this, I don't know what generation, she's young, I'm sure. Her mom said, you're spending too much time on TikTok, and she made some song that says, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. I mean, this is where they spend all their time. And so we have to find a way to reach, it's always been the age-old question, especially since I become a pastor, is how do we reach young people? I don't think it's by being corny, and I don't think it's by trying to, make funny TikToks, which sometimes can be funny and can reach some people, but I think it's trying to just at least come to a level that they're at.
Authenticity
Yeah,
is
yeah.
huge.
We don't have to be something we're not, but we do have to utilize a platform that they're already on
Yeah.
and regularly using.
Well, and
So,
I would say you can't be somebody that you're not, because they're gonna find that, they're gonna know it's that, because
yeah,
that's what happens all the time. Is you see these people that are like, these people are fake, these people are so and so,
they already
and it's
use the
like,
internet.
and yeah, and like, have you run across Christian TikTok?
No, I
It's
haven't.
a it's a thing.
I don't want to. I don't want to get
It's
into
not
this.
bad. It's
Some of
so
them
good.
are. No,
Well,
no,
you're right.
no.
Some of them,
You got to be careful on saying it's so good. Okay, I've seen some
a lot
Christian
of the
TikToks
ones
that
I
I'm
have
like,
run into
can't
have
do
been
this.
really, really good. Like, I ran into
There
one and I
was,
was just chilling, swiping,
yeah,
and I ran into a dude that just started praying for me. And I was
yeah,
like, there's no way he's praying for me. He made a video and put it on TikTok, but like, what he was saying was something that I needed to hear,
yeah,
and I accepted that prayer on my behalf.
yeah,
And then I looked at the comments, because I was like, this guy's probably getting shredded
yeah.
on TikTok praying for people. Nope, every single
No,
one of them
no.
positive, positive,
I've seen
positive,
some.
positive.
I saw one guy who had like some 100,000 likes on his
Yeah.
video of him talking about being a Christian. Like, it's definitely a platform. It's just whether
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
whether we want to use it. It's whether if we want to take the time to learn, which I also think is it's a whole different conversation, because that could be a whole
Sure.
hour-long podcast. But I think there is this reality of like, do you want to take the time to learn something? And
Yeah.
for most people, the answer is probably no.
Nope.
And again, a tangent we're not going to go down. But my next one, if you don't mind me transitioning to it,
Yeah, go ahead.
because I think this could take more time than we probably should have committed. We'll have to be careful how long we talk about this. But probably the greatest thing, and it's something that I already know. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, a lot of time on Facebook. My wife will tell you that I get riled up by Facebook pretty regularly, and she tells me I need to just close the app. But I think for me, probably the thing that has become more of a reality than ever during COVID is that misinformation is one of the single most dangerous things in our world today. And I know that's dark, and we'll probably end on this one, so it'll end on
More contagious than COVID.
It really is, but I just think, I've talked about it before. It's a talking point for me, I guess, or it's something that is really I'm passionate about. But the reality of it is like, for instance, I think we've talked about this. If I decide as a person the Earth is flat, in today's world, I can go to the internet and I can find 1 million people, 1 billion people, however many people that will agree with me. And therefore, my point is now valid. And I think, like, it's very sad to me how far we've come in the world, that we've gone that far backwards. That things that, like, we once could prove by science, now we can't even prove to people with science. People will be like, no, because I went to the internet, and the internet tells me that it's flat.
Yeah.
And I can show you 1 million people who can prove it to you. And it's just like, throughout COVID, it's become more and more and more and more apparent that people want to believe things, therefore they find a backing to believe those things. And it's very sad to me. It's very sad to me that people think that 200,000 people died, whether for a political campaign, if you want to go down that route, whether for a hoax, whether I've heard everything under the sun. I could go to Facebook right now probably and find 10 different ideas of why this is not a real thing we're going through. But it's just crazy, and it's very sad, and it's very heartbreaking to me, especially because I don't get into arguments on the internet, because you're not going to win those arguments.
Right. It just becomes a shouting match.
It does. It's two people with two differing opinions screaming at each other on a platform that hundreds of thousands of other people can see. And so I don't engage in that. But I do think there's a very tragic reality of, like, the truth is very relative in our world now. The truth is... I'm sorry. Pause for a second. My cat has... the
Me,
art.
me in the comment section were just chatting to see if you were gonna delete this in the edit, or if you were just gonna
I will
leave it in.
probably edit it out and just have a big box that says a catastrophe.
Catastrophe.
See,
I
yeah.
like it. Yep. I like
Anyways,
it.
but anyways, I've totally lost my train of thought, which is very depressing. But I think it is very sad that like truth has become relative again. Which if you look back in history, this was always an ideology. You can go way back in time and see this idea of people just believing what they want because they want to. But I just think it's very tragic. And I think it's even more tragic because the internet can boost it, if you want to use that word, or it can accelerate that.
Yeah.
And there's no stopping it. Like there's more. I can't remember where I heard this, and it was certainly during election times here in the United States, but there's more misinformation spread than real information spread, especially on Facebook, which is the platform everybody and their literal grandmother uses.
Their actual grandmother.
Their actual grandmothers on Facebook. And there's no way to reason yourself out of that. And that's really tragic to me. And I think it's probably even more tragic to the people who have lost loved ones to this. When they see things where it's like the insensitivity of somebody saying, this is all a hoax, or this was to benefit some political campaign. Well, that person lost a loved one. And that's what we're talking about.
The half lie of this wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
that's horrible.
Yeah.
No, lots of people died. This is worse than what we thought it was going to be, and you can't devalue lives like that. Oh, we only lost. I think our county is up to we're over 10 at this point, and you might say that's a small number. Tell that to the families.
Yeah.
Tell that to the families that have lost loved ones.
Yeah, I think we've only had one lost loved, or one person, one death here in my county. But again, one is too many. And when we devalue it by saying it's a hoax, it's fake, it's not as bad as people make it out to be, it's for whatever reason, it's this person's fault. Again, none of those things are benefiting. But I think we live in a world now where people, we've reached a place where people have to have their voices heard. There was certainly a time, I know my grandpa, my papa, growing up, he used to say, I don't talk about politics or religion. Now, whether you agree with it or not, that was his mentality, because he did not feel like he always had to have his voice heard. Him and my grandmother always voted differently for 60 plus years. They voted differently in every election that ever happened, but they didn't feel the need to talk about it. And I think we've lost that as a whole. And you can't say it's a generational thing, because it's every generation now. Anybody who is online now feels like they need to hear have their voice heard. And so that's really the thing that's really stuck out to me as we've gone through this whole pandemic. Tragically, I mean, it's very sad to me, and I wish there was some remedy to that, but I don't think there ever will be. If anything, this will just get progressively worse the longer it goes on. I'm not talking just about COVID either. I'm talking about the internet in general. I mean, it's not gonna. We don't just one day wake up and go, oh yeah, science, that was cool, we should believe in that again. We should stick to what people know. It's not how things are anymore.
I think though, in an attempt for optimism.
Hit me with an attempt for optimism.
Hit you with it, yeah. I think it's something that we certainly can correct. It's something that has already happened. The damage has been done. I'm referring to the internet, not just COVID.
Yeah, of course.
The way things are the way they are because we as a society have allowed them to get to this point. But I think to an extent, a lot of it stems from us learning as kids that we that it's more important in school for us to learn what to learn and less important for us to learn how to learn. You see what I'm saying? Or what to think as opposed to how to think.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher in my junior year, Mr. Smith, super generic name.
I had
He was
Mr.
in.
Smith junior year. Let's go. It's a thing.
Don't you though? Of course you do. Everybody had a
person had
Mr.
a
or Mrs.
teacher.
Smith.
Yeah, that was Mr. Smith.
And what he taught me was not. I couldn't tell you anything beyond what I remember, which is he taught us critical thinking.
Yeah.
He was the only teacher that added this into his curriculum because, he was supposed to be teaching us like English stuff,
It's
right?
always
Like
English.
essays.
It's always
and
English.
it's always the English teacher. But what he taught us was how to listen to somebody's point of view and then look at look at what the answers are, look at all the different answers, what all the possible answers are, and then working on it yourself.
Yeah.
And not necessarily just being okay with people telling you what to think.
Yeah.
Because in school they give you textbooks, and in those textbooks are what has happened and what will happen and what should happen and the order of events. Basically what we found out is 10 years later, the math that we learned is all completely wrong.
No,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't want to hear this because that's 100%
new
wrong.
math.
The math they learn now is wrong. Okay? Have you seen the way they do math? Let's not go down that path.
So my point of that is correct, because they teach you what to think.
Yeah.
They're not teaching us how to think.
Yeah.
And they're not teaching us critical thinking in a way that makes sense for all of us to be able to function as complete adults. Because now we're just taking everything in as the gospel truth. And I don't care what side politically you're on or what side of religion or non-religion or whatever you're on, but you're being fed information and you're just taking it and turning it around and vomiting it back out. And that's part of the problem of the internet, is that there's zero accountability, because all you need to do is delete an account or start a new one, and you have a whole fresh new identity.
It's what's interesting about the internet is that everything is, whether it's politics, whether it's big companies, whether it's Facebook, everything is an advertisement. And why I say that is because everybody looks at the financial standpoint of something before they say it. They've already done the research. They know the market. Therefore, if they're making one group very mad by what they're saying, they're making a greater group happy. They wouldn't have said it otherwise. Not otherwise. And so I do think, like, we are, as people, we have to become critical thinkers. Like, we have to learn to think for ourselves. And I'm not trying to insult anybody, because I'm sure some people would listen to this and be like, well, I do think for myself. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think there is a lot of people now, whether old or young, who are impacted, and just, you're right, they regurgitate what they have heard, and whether it's true or not, that then becomes their standpoint. You see it on Facebook all the time. Again, why I should not be allowed on Facebook, because I get real heated. Because you know,
hear what this idiot said?
Because you can look on the internet, and you can, if you want to then use the internet as a good thing, you can look on the internet and probably pretty quickly find what is real and what is not real. What is fake, what is very obviously fake, but very, very few people do that research anymore. They take what they hear from the person that they like, or groups that they like, or website that they like, and they regurgitate it. And it doesn't always have to be true anymore. But I do think, like, again, going back to COVID, like, and linking it with who we are as pastors, as Christians. Christians, more than anybody, should be very, very hyper-aware, self-aware of what we're posting. Not to say we can't have opinions, not to say that we shouldn't support certain things or not support certain things, but I mean, especially during times like these, when our reach is more global than it's ever been, misinformation or very opinionated things about COVID can really ruin the opportunity to share the gospel.
Yeah.
And that's so sad to me. So sad.
Screwing
that
it
we
up
would,
for the rest of us.
Well, it's just sad that we would use. We have a platform we've never had before, and we can ruin it in 10 seconds. And that's the reality is that's what the internet does. Yeah, you can ruin your whole image in 10 seconds. Like I could have just ruined it by saying what all I've said in this podcast, and people will never listen to you again. And it's just crazy, and so we have to be very wary of what we're talking about, and always coming from like the grace-filled perspective of like thinking about those who have lost people. I recently saw a post about how things in Italy aren't as bad as you think it is, and they crossed like the 40,000 mark on deaths. And I saw people reposting it on my Facebook, and it's just like, it's unreal. And so
Yeah.
that's the thing that stuck out to me the most as we went through this pandemic. We're still in it. I make it sound like we're done with it. Across the world, everybody still has different restrictions. Texas, I know we've kind of laxed up a little bit. We can go to the movie theaters now if you want to go to the movies. I haven't gone. Probably won't go. But we're still in it, which is crazy to me. And I don't know how long we'll be in it. But,
I was really, talking about COVID, I was really upset with how slow the nation responded to it.
Yeah.
And now I'm even more upset
how quickly
at how quickly we're getting over it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, 4 or 5 weeks, I guess.
I don't know how long it's been for us.
Get back to work.
I was trying to do the math for us, but I couldn't figure it out because everything stopped. It started at different timelines and ended at different timelines. I feel like it's been 6-7 weeks now almost.
Feels like 3 years for me.
It does. No, I mean we're not going to get into this. Are we trying to stay optimistic? Are we going to get into this right here? about it feels like
I said we would attempt optimism.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say we'd succeed.
It's felt like 50 years for me. Okay,
50 and a half.
Again, I've gone back to this like meme on Facebook like 50 times, 100 times during COVID. But there are two different COVID experiences. There are people with kids and people without kids. And
look, man.
You're with me. You understand.
I'll need it.
You concede. I concede.
I'll need it in my life.
But goodness gracious. Yeah, it has been a long time. But I don't know if there's anything else I have left to say on this. I've kind of shared the things that have stuck out to me.
Let's ride the COVID wave, my guy.
Let's. I don't even know what that means, but I'm not trying to ride a COVID wave. Okay.
I don't know either.
But that's this week's episode of Attempted Optimism podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you're on iTunes, make sure you hit subscribe because we are officially on there. Every episode will be on there. If you're on SoundCloud, leave us a follow. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe the video. We have new content every Tuesday for the podcast, every Thursday for Faithful Footsteps, and hopefully some more new content coming out. Justin and I have been a little hesitant to put out more content at this point. We like the pace we're going at, but at some point in the future, we do both plan on putting out some more content, some more enjoyable, fun type content like we've had. And so, anyways, I hope you've enjoyed, and we will see you on the next episode. He's always got to end it.